What's up, everybody? We're back with episode 2 of That Time I Got Reincarnated in the Same World as an Anime Podcaster.
I'm so happy that you know the name because it's so easy to flub up.
Well, I should remember it. I came up with it. So, like I said, episode 2. Here we are. We're doing it again.
We did it.
We actually had a really good response for the first episode. I was really happy. Got way more hits than I thought we would get. So
thank you, everybody.
Yeah. Thanks to everybody who's listening.
Hopefully you're still listening.
Yeah. I mean, if you hear this, you're listening to it. So thanks. So just to recap, if you didn't listen to the first episode, I am Isekai Sensei-Sama, aka Brad, and I'm joined by the Weeb Cabal, consisting of Kermit D. Grog, aka Andrew.
Hello, it's me, Kermit and/or Andrew. I'm so happy you used the word cabal. It's one of my favorites.
And Bento Baggins, aka Ben.
Konnichiwa, minasan.
And we're going to keep doing that for some reason. So what we're doing is we watch anime together. We talk about anime and manga and stuff, and we decided we wanted to put those conversations out into the world. And so that's what we're doing. And we had a lot of fun with this the first episode. If you didn't listen to it, you should definitely go back and check it out. And we're going to keep doing it. So, as I said, episode 2, we're going to get into it.
Please enjoy.
I just want to say, if you're listening to this right now, hit us up on social media and let us know what you think about this. Even if you don't listen to the whole thing, we'd love to hear from you.
Even if you don't like it, let us know so we can know about that.
Yeah, it's
Let's try to improve.
I have a fragile ego.
It's true. Please be
Come at me.
Please be safe. Please be soft too.
Direct all hate
Senpai-sama.
to Ben and all praise to Brad.
Everyone always does.
Don't talk to me though. Don't talk to me at all.
So Ben, you mentioned before that you never get to talk about all your anime and manga stuff on your other podcast. So I figured today we would jump into one of your discussion topics.
Okay.
So the one I pulled out is how anime influences other mediums.
Oh, that's an interesting one.
Yeah. So did you have a central component of that thought that you wanted to start us off with?
Did I have a central thesis on that? I think when I said it, I usually think in terms of comic books. So manga versus comics. And obviously there's a lot of James Patterson has a manga. I think Courtney Love had a manga at some point. So there's a lot of people getting into manga that aren't Japanese comic creators. And it's sort of become a style, but it's hard to define. But more and more, even in like Marvel, DC, the superhero comics, you start to see anime influencing the art. You start to see, I think, anime influencing even a lot of storytelling in adjacent media. But even books and movies and stuff, you're starting to get more of the training arc, which didn't used to be a thing in a lot of Western media.
So when you're talking about that, are you thinking in terms of the kind of tropes that a manga or an anime has? Because when we talk about how anime and manga influences what we would call, Western media, is there an actual difference? Because manga is comic, right? Like, what is the actual thing besides, it was made in Japan that makes it a manga? Because, like you said, there's all these people who have written mangas. They're Western, right? So are they actual mangas or are they just comics?
Well, this goes into, there's a whole big topic there that we could probably do a lot with on, should there even be a manga section or should it just be the graphic novel section and you've got the Japanese comics next to the American, next to the French. But what I'm thinking of specifically when I talk about influence, I'm thinking about style and I'm thinking about tropes. And I think I would organize my general thesis something like this, even though it's not really organized. You've got early anime like Astro Boy.
Speed Racer.
Yeah. And they look very obviously influenced by Disney. And then...
Which is correct. They legit were.
And so then, as time goes on, anime becomes super popular. Dragon Ball Z becomes super popular. You start to see more and more Western cartoons adopting anime style. And we had this weird cyclical effect where anime started off as a medium predominantly influenced by Western animation that was sort of pioneering it. And now all of that has come full circle back to you get something like Teen Titans, which is incorporating a ton of like anime reaction faces and just simple things like, obviously anime, when you think about it, especially back in like the 90s and the 80s, you think big eyes, small mouth,
More serialized storytelling, spiky hair.
The one I always go back to is one of my favorite series, which is Avatar: The Last Airbender.
It's a great one.
Because when that came out, I mean, I was fairly young when that first came out, and I remember watching it and going, "Oh, this is an anime." I knew what anime was at that time, but I didn't have like all the internet message boards and everything. So when I watched it, I was like, "Oh, this is an anime." Come to find out later, oh no, like literally Nickelodeon made this. Like it was Western made.
It's the brainchild of two white dudes.
Right.
Yeah.
But there is so much influence in the animation from those anime styles that it looks very much like an anime. Even if I don't know that there's anything in Avatar that jumps out at me as like that's an anime trope. I'm sure there's some things there, but
there's a couple in there, kind of akin to what Ben said of like certain design little things or the like zoom ins on faces and reactions and stuff like that. But there's not like a lot. It's like every so often those pop up and you go, oh, okay, I can see this influence in it.
So I think that's a really good example of like, yes, this is the influence that's come from there. You know, can you call it an anime? I mean, it's animation.
So I'm going a little deeper here than maybe I originally intended when I proposed the topic.
Oh, we're going to get bro philosophies now, or?
I don't know if we're going all the way into the philosophy.
We'll have to wait for that.
But I don't know if it's still a thing. I'm an elderly man, and I've kind of fallen out of the zeitgeist. But when I was a kid and I was into anime, that was like a whole subculture into itself. You were one of those people that was into anime. And I'm sure they're still around, but does anybody remember anime music videos?
Yes.
OVAs?
AMVs, you charlatan.
Yeah. So there was a big to-do when one of my favorite anime music video artists, I don't know what you'd call them, directors, created a Batman Beyond AMV. And people said, no, that doesn't count. It's not anime. Except if you put Batman Beyond next to Big O, I don't know if I could really tell you they were made by two different people.
Yeah.
Counterpoint or just point in general, did that AMV, if you remember, have the trappings of the other AMVs that were actually anime?
Yeah, if I remember a lot about this. It actually, I think it was
very formative.
The song "Turn Me On, Mr. Deadman," and it was all about the Batman Beyond Joker movie, where the Joker came back as like he took over Robin's body or something. And they had like all the fight scene things. I mean, it was very much an anime music video. And so that obviously influenced this guy. He saw enough similarity between what an anime music video was and what a cartoon music video was. But he didn't bother calling it a cartoon music video because it was still hitting all the beats of an AMV. It was designed to give you the dopamine hits. For me, AMVs were always focus on the best fight scenes, put them to an exciting song, and just really get the adrenaline or the dopamine going. And I think it's similar. Like, if we want to talk about what is a manga, what is an anime, in the manga section, there is, I always use this one as an example, Maximum Ride, written by James Patterson, drawn by a Korean guy.
A manhwa.
But is it? Or is it a manga? Because it's in the manga section, even though
it doesn't have the trappings of it.
We've never really discussed as like a subculture or as, I guess, consumers of this, like, what boxes does a thing need to check to be a manga?
Well, when you say we've never discussed that, you mean us three? Because that's something that's
I mean,
for a long time.
The general culture, like Barnes and Noble, there's an implicit understanding of what a manga is. And because that particular comic looks a certain way, it goes in the manga section and not the comic section.
I think at a consumer level, it makes sense to make a differentiation because one is basically an import. So you have...
But what happens when the import is made
in America?
Well, but here's the thing. You know, so for a lot of stories, this doesn't matter. But there's a large percentage of manga that it does matter that it's made from a Japanese culture perspective. There's cultural norms. There's different ways that Japanese society works that if you are reading that going, oh, this is Western, this is me, you're going to get totally lost because I shouldn't say totally.
I made faces at him just to be clear.
You will get lost because there are differences. There are things that are different enough that you'll go, oh, so this story point happens because of this thing, but we don't do that in America.
So I guess how does this work then? Because Ben was describing that cyclical nature of just sort of the Western animation inspired early anime, and then that kind of inspires us, and it's this constant sharing it. We are approaching the not homunculus. What's the word that I want?
Singularity.
The singularity, but that's also a different thing entirely. But yeah, we're becoming more homogeneous. I think that's the word I want. Something like that.
And so that
globalization, fun buzzwords.
my follow on to that is that while from that consumer perspective, it would be good to have that differentiation. So a consumer, especially one who doesn't know better, when they go into a shop or online or whatever, and is picking something out, they have that hint for them. But from like our perspective of normal, people within the culture already, it sort of doesn't make sense to make a differentiation because it's all just comic books and cartoons when it comes down to it.
But it's a different feel. It's the idea. And I guess that like you can have American made manga because I feel like this fits everything in Ben's example, the AMV is that first the thing comes into being and is named. And then it is done in a certain way that it gains tropes. It gains certain trappings about it that after a while, the thing that is the shell is no longer what it is. It's these other things around it. An AMV is an anime music video, but you can make other things in that they don't involve anime or might not even be a music video, but because they contain the trappings of that scene, it can fall under that umbrella.
It becomes an animation music video.
Yeah, also true. But it's it's like, what do you need to see to go that this is a manga? Like I feel like it's to anything when you're coming to labeling. So I always come back to that old court ruling of it's like, I can't define pornography, but I know it when I see it. And I feel like you could say that of anything where the kind of definition is weird. You can't use what's on the tin because when you just say anime, it's like, animation, everything's animation, but it's like, no, there's certain trappings with this that it shows up other places and that's what it is. But like from a manga point, it's like, is it a design? Is it a look? A book we're going to talk about later this very episode, Spy Family, has a very like Western inspired look to it. All the designs, like it looks like kind of a Western children's book to an extent sometimes. Like, does it mean like, and that's where I also come back to that whole globalization homogeneous thing, is that because they're taking on more things from the West and their stuff will resemble more things from us and our stuff will resemble stuff from like that. And we kind of have this weird meet in the middle. It's like, can something from them exit the tropes and the trappings of it so much that it no longer is that, even though from an older definition, it would fit under it.
So I think, maybe to clarify a little bit, I'm not necessarily saying like, oh, we shouldn't label it or anything like that. But what I am saying is this idea that we can in some way strictly define it, or even sort of strictly define it, doesn't really make sense. And I think what the words are, manga, anime, comic book, cartoon,
graphic novel,
what those are shortcuts. So instead of going, oh, manga comes from Japan and comic books come from America or the West, whatever you want to say. Instead,
Europe would have a lot of mean words for you if you just said America, especially France.
Instead, what's happening is you're saying manga is a comic book with these certain traits normally from Japan.
So I've got 3 ideas about that.
And I have a counterpoint as well when you're done.
I mean, the first thing is, as they influence each other, there's a whole generation of kids who have grown up with a huge manga section in Barnes and Noble for as long as they can remember.
Bless them.
When they go on to, I have seen so many rap album covers or single covers that are anime style, very intentionally meant to look like anime, but they're probably drawn by somebody from America for Americans. And so that will eventually the definition of what manga is or isn't is going to change and erode, and that's fine. And I don't think it's bad or good to have a manga section. I want to kind of examine what the intentions are behind separating them, because the second thought is, when does a food get consumed enough in your country to move out of the international food aisle and just into the, like, when does spaghetti sauce cease to be Italian and just move? And
that's some wisdom right there.
That's definitely a good point. And does that come down to the zeitgeist of it, where it has to be pervasive enough in the society that basically any person in that society will go, oh yes, this is a thing that we consume?
Well, and my third thought then is, and it might be a weird thing to say for somebody doing an anime podcast, but do you consume something just because, or are you more likely to consume something just because it's anime or manga? Like, is it a fetishization of Japanese media, or is it just because it's fine to say I can't define what it is, but then what about it being Japanese or from Japan really gets you?
Will Brad read more isekais because they are isekais?
I can actually answer this question.
And not even entirely from Japan. You branched out into Korea and you branched out into manhwa, so there you go. Still Eastern-y.
I'm going to answer this
similar.
Very honestly, which is, yes, I am more likely to read something that is from Japan or Korea. Not China. Not too into the Chinese ones. There's one that I read, and I think I have 2 or 3 on my to-read list. But the point is, there is something cultural about, those Asian cultures that I'm drawn to, that as I mentioned in the last episode, the baseline you get for like an isekai of those cultural keystones, there's something that I'm drawn to about that makes me more likely to go, oh yes, because this has these cultural set pieces from Japan, from Korea, that I recognize, like, those are the things that the story is built on that I'm drawn to. And it's not that I don't like Western comics. I do enjoy different Western comics, although I will say something like X-Men or something like that, I've never really gotten into, because I've always felt very lost, because it always feels like, where do you start?
It's a soap opera.
Whereas with most manga, it's like, oh, here's
start
the beginning.
volume 1.
Right, and you go for it.
Brad, did you know that Naruto is Boruto's dad?
What?
Start there.
Is that why they sound so similar?
I'm sorry. That was me trying to do a bit about, knowing where to start with stuff. But
yeah.
But no, I get that. Well, I guess that's where, again, now we get to get another fun things. I'd say in American comics, if you're approaching it from like the superhero point of view, and not like, here's another series that is self-contained within itself, or here is a one shot, or
yeah. But I mean, like I said, I really enjoy Avatar: The Last Airbender, and the sequel to that,
Legend of Korra,
which is sort of divisive.
I'm a Korra stan. I'll take this.
I really enjoyed it. So it's not. I mean, and I like Rick and Morty.
He's got a very big brain. You need a really big brain to get the jokes, Rick.
Well, that's Szechuan sauce.
And I want to be clear. I'm not. Fetishization is a strong word.
Yeah,
I'm not.
Kind of is.
I'm not calling anybody a racist for preferring manga or anything like that, because I definitely did at one point in time too. And what changed wasn't so much myself as the selection of stuff available to me. In the 90s, when I was growing up and I was looking at comics, I did read the X-Men, but one of the things that attracted me to manga was the diversity of stories and visuals. Even though they're all from Japan, you get so many different styles within the umbrella of manga. You get slice of life stories, action stories, horror stories, whereas everything in the graphic novel section was like Marvel or DC. There wasn't a lot of indie stuff, and a lot of indie comics was kind of failing at that point in time. And big comic heads might say I'm wrong about that, but at least in my town, we didn't have a big comic shop that stocked a lot of different things. And I feel like maybe one of the influences anime and manga have had on American comics is that there's a bunch of kids who grew up reading manga and watching anime, and now they are thinking, okay, I can make a comic about whatever kind of story I want. I don't have to draw a big, muscly Greek god as a main character every time.
But you can if you want to.
Yeah,
it works pretty well for a Iraqi author of JoJo. So if you want to draw big dude, muscle dudes, go for it. But you can draw whatever you want.
You find a style that works for you.
There you go.
With it.
Yeah, that is a really good point, Ben. I never really thought about that, because my kind of lower level thought of that was just like, this showed me something that I hadn't seen anywhere else as a kid. And now it's just sort of, I'd say wanting my fix, and that kind of treats it, you know, and that drug thing, but it's just like, I can't find that anywhere else. There's a certain itch that anime will scratch and manga will scratch that nothing else does. And I think some of that is the general variety of it, I guess, to an extent.
Well, and like, I don't think a comic like Scott Pilgrim exists if that guy didn't grow up reading manga.
Yeah, 1,000,000,000%. Is Scott Pilgrim a manga? There you go. There's a question. It's volumetric. It's released in tankobons, just like manga normally is. It's, you know, like, is that a manga?
Yeah.
I would have to say, you know, depends on how you want to define fetishizing something. Because, like, so I looked this up real quick. Have an excessive and irrational commitment to or obsession with something.
I mean, we do have a club about it, and it's viewing.
The thing is, though, is like, I wouldn't say that my enjoyment of it, including down to I want to talk about it a whole bunch, is actually, well, excessive. It is excessive, but it's not irrational.
No. And what I was specifically thinking of when I used that word was the type of person who, having found out Avatar: The Last Airbender was not an anime, would stop watching it.
Right. And I think that kind of person is
not somebody you should talk to because they suck.
Right.
Usually a child, maybe.
A teenager.
They're not enjoying that because it's got a good story, because they like the animation. They're enjoying it because it is a thing that they think is better in some way.
Well, and like I said, when I was a kid, if you were into anime, you were an anime kid. That was quite possibly like your peer group, your subculture.
That was the thing.
And so you had to like anime. You had to see as many anime as possible so you could have more anime knowledge than the next guy, because that was like street cred.
Yeah.
In that incredibly nerdy community.
Right.
But
I never actually had a point where I was like, oh, anime or manga is the whole thing. Although, to be fair, I didn't actually get into manga until like a year and a half ago. But I've been watching anime since I was 13, 14, something like that. So there wasn't ever really a point where I was like, oh, anime is superior in every way and everything. Like, no, I always had this thought of like, oh, this is something I like, but then here's other things that I like. There was never a point where I was that obsessed with it.
No, and I think for the most part, what I'm seeing from, I'm old enough now to say the younger generation, is they don't care. Like the lines have blurred a lot.
It's awesome.
Yeah. And I do wonder then how useful is the manga section?
The thing is, though, in terms of the youth not caring, I think that's something that's sort of happening across media in general. Because for a long, and maybe this was just like, this is what it looks like in the past, but I feel like for a long time you had these sort of cultures of genres. So like you had the rock and roll people, you had the punk people, you had the swing people, and like
the swing people.
It was the 90s. There was a revival.
There was a revival.
And like those people were always like, this is the thing. Ska people.
coming at me now.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say you've instantly put on guard two of your co-hosts, Brad. Be careful. Choose your words wisely.
That was always,
or you're going to have to pick it up.
Pick it up.
Those became like, this is all we're going to listen to.
Yeah.
It's superior to everything else.
It's your identity.
Right.
That's a teenage thing, though. That's when you don't know what you're doing. You stake yourself to those things.
But as we're saying now, people might still be sort of building an identity around something, but it's much less combative, where it's like, oh, this is my thing, but also your thing can be cool too. Like,
when it seems like it's a lot more acceptable to just have a variety of interests.
Right.
Yeah.
I feel like that's more of just,
because there's so much stuff.
Culture as a whole is growing and maturing.
Well, like when you get a rapper who has an anime thing on his cover, like that used to be
wild,
not tough.
Yeah.
And like that was important. And now people are like, no, it's just mainstream. Like when you've got examples being set like that of people who are bending genres in music and also doing all different kinds of stuff with their aesthetic. If you look at the aesthetic of like what used to be SoundCloud rap, it blended almost with what used to be emo.
Well, I was just thinking that I think the reason that we are having this sort of growing up moment where people are going, oh, other stuff can be good too, even if I don't quite enjoy it. Other people, and I think we have the internet to thank for that. There's plenty of stuff with the internet and social media these days where it's like, oh, this isn't good. Maybe we shouldn't be doing this. But I think acceptance of other people's tastes is probably directly from the internet, because the internet allows you to see all these different perspectives. Whereas I think in the past, before so many people were on the internet, it was like, oh, your group of friends that you had your little echo chamber. Now, I mean, we still have echo chambers online, but you had your little echo chamber. So you were rolling with your friends and you all liked ska. And so that was your thing because
it was hard to get. You didn't just have an infinite, fire hose of it. And I feel like this is kind of to Ben's earlier point that I'm still chewing on, of like the whole, when the food in the international aisle becomes so widespread that it just becomes food in a food aisle, is like kids grow up with just everything is accessible to them. It's not this special, like, I have to go to this spot. I mean, this wasn't mine, but I've heard enough stories of it, of the like I have to go to the Suncoast and spend $50 to buy a VHS tape of 2 episodes of Dragon Ball Z because I can't get anywhere else. Like, those cultures grow up because there's other trappings around them that make it like, this is my identity because I have to go out of my way.
Right.
It's something special to get when I'm waiting for that next manga and I have no idea when it's coming because the internet isn't a thing enough to know, or like freaking, even just a couple years ago before like JoJo blew up in America, where it's just like, we didn't have good English scans of part 5 for like ages. Like, that is a fairly recent thing, but it's like, there's no scarcity. It's not as special because there's no scarcity to it now, which is great because it means everybody can get at it. But I feel like that means you're traveling towards that point. It's like when we are gone and the next generation get to grow up with just, it was a thing that was around. Like when I hear stories of people who are around my age, it's like, oh yeah, my dad watched anime and that's how I got into it. Like, I can't fathom that.
Yeah.
To sit down and show my father an anime makes me want to curl up into a ball and die of shame. Sorry, Dad. He's not going to listen to this. He doesn't know what a podcast is.
Hi, Mr. Grog.
Hi, Mr. the Grog.
Please, Mr. the Grog was my father. But like, that's the thing, is I think because we kind of grew up in that time that we viewed it under that way, that it was delineated, because it wasn't as mashed together now. And now it's still its own style, but it's still kind of mushing together. Like, we have Netflix has anime that was made in Japan and made explicitly for Americans, which makes my head hurt as a concept. Because then it's like, is it an anime? Like, it has the trappings, but it's not like something we're kind of peeping in on, that it's like kind of for us and kind of not, or it's kind of where like it's specifically made, even though it looks quote unquote like an anime and has a couple of its tropes, like, and it's just like, we're making new hybrid monsters, and it's interesting to see what comes out of it. I shouldn't say monsters, but like,
I'd be a failure as an anime podcaster if I didn't point out, though, they did do that with Thundercats.
Was Thundercats an anime that was made for Americans, or was Thundercats
by a Japanese studio for Americans?
Oh, I didn't know that.
And they go,
well, there you go.
Right.
Yep. But no, in all seriousness, like you talk about the Suncoast thing. I literally bought Trigun. I have the first. I had the first 4 episodes on VHS, and you had to pick dubbed or subbed VHS.
Oh. Like that's why there was the war, because what you could get your hands on. Like there's a Let's Player that I follow who like he got into Naruto early, and it's for him. It's like he's used to the sub voices, and me like even if I don't like Naruto that much, like I grew up with the dub voices, so that is the voices they are. Same with Dragon Ball Z. It's like I need to watch the dub. That is how they sound like.
There was a kid at my school when we were in 6th grade who got Japanese fan subs ripped from a VHS onto a computer, which was kind of hard to come by. That technology itself was kind of hard to come by back then.
Sort of still hard to come by.
And he got it from some guy who went to New York City to go to a convention, and he came back with the Boo Saga. He had like every 3rd episode. We didn't even have the whole thing. And he was a legend.
Exactly. Because it was hard to get by. Like we have like simul dubs now, not even simul subs. It's like you can pick whatever you want to pick, and it is there for you. The ease of access is practically zero now, and that's what leads it to become less of its own little category, even more so than it already has, because it's all integrating together, which is kind of neat, but our brains don't do that because that wasn't something like that. It wasn't like that for us.
I'm going to show my age right now. The internet was such when I was getting into this stuff. I had friends mail me a CD because it was faster than sending it like files.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Andrew, I think you're right that it has to do with the scarcity of it, and
that creates the scene.
Right. Right. It creates the zeitgeist because here's something special. What I find interesting, though, because I'm thinking back on my own consumption, and I think the scarcity of it was actually the thing that kept me from going completely like obsessing like that. Because, there was some of it that I watched and I liked, but there wasn't so much like there is now that I still had to go, I'm going to go watch this other thing, this American thing, because there's not enough anime to actually consume.
That you like.
Right.
But now there's probably stuff out there that you like that you've never seen or don't have the time to.
Right. Yeah. I think you hit the point where that's how most of those sort of groups came about. But for me, it was actually the opposite. Because I'm a special boy.
Well, and to your point, the edgiest thing on TV when we were a kid, this is going back to it gave us something we didn't have. The Simpsons, the concept of The Simpsons as an adult cartoon was still really edgy and still really stupid to so many people. And like now you've got things like Rick and Morty, there's 50,000 adult-oriented cartoons on Netflix. And the idea that there were these cartoons in another country that had violence, like people got murdered and there was all this blood, like that was very cool and weird and niche to us at the time. And so I think that's where all that style was born from. And it's kind of like people who are like, hey, there's this awesome exotic food called chicken tikka masala. But now it's you can get tikka masala sauce at every grocery store, at least around here. And so it's when does it just become part of the culture?
Yeah. When you can get something to scratch the itch everywhere.
Yeah.
Because there's certain things, like there's certain aspects I was like thinking about like what's on my bookshelf of like manga that I grew up reading and reading now. It's just like, I haven't found another thing that scratches the sports anime manga itch. No one's made that. That is not prevalent enough. It's still this kind of special little thing.
Have you ever read? This is just me and you talking now.
Go for it.
Have you ever read Fence?
No.
If I wish we had pull it up. I wish we pull it up, Isekai. I wish we could show the image. But there's a comic book called Fence. It has a very anime manga style. It's about a boys fencing team. It's kind of half BL, half sport, but like it's an interesting.
Actually, no. You know what? I just remembered. It is probably right next to you on the bookshelf that you were sitting in front of, Ben, of my bookshelf. I forgot because there's only one collected shoot, what's the form up from a single issue in comics?
Trade paperback?
Yeah, it might even just come in a trade called The Avant-Gardes, about an all-women's college basketball team. And it's all about them getting better, but also the interpersonal between the players. And like, this person's really good, but they went through a trauma. And it's not as like cartoony. It's like a little bit more grounded and very gay. It's very gay, which is like one of the benefits admittedly, but like that was getting closer to it. It's just like, I like having a group of people where the interpersonal stuff's important, but also just them improving and stuff like that. Like through that eye of like sports, like the thing that's also on my shelf that is the manga is the I Shield 21, which is a football manga. Yep. And like, I love that thing. It is so just the way that you can use sports to tell these stories, that you get to have an entire cast of characters, and it's not like a Dragon Ball Z where you just have a cast of characters and fights are usually one-on-one. Every time you have a game, everybody gets to have a moment because you need to field an entire team. So you get to have an entire cast and all of them get to do cool things and improve, and nobody gets left behind that much because everybody has to have a moment because it's a team game. And like the trappings and the mechanics of that are still something I have not seen. Not even just in manga, like I haven't even seen it that much in manga and anime enough that I found enough that scratches the itch in that way. And I think that goes even further than just manga. That's, maybe even further than just genre, because it's like a particular type of a particular genre of the medium of manga, of the general umbrella term of like, comic art. Just slice tinier and tinier and tinier and tinier,
Yeah.
But it's like, that's the thing. It's like, not all of us are so catered to like Lucky Brad over here with his isekais, where he can just lift his foot. He can put his hand into the sand and then pull out gems upon gems.
Oh, there's not very many gems.
He can pull out food upon food to eat. It's not all good, but it's food. It tastes like the thing he likes.
Not a lot of gems, but there's no shortage of rocks.
There's no shortage of junk food. Every so often you get a nice quality meal, but you have no shortage of things that taste like the thing that you like.
Lots and lots of gravel, and there's like a couple diamonds in there.
Sometimes you just like rolling the gravel around your hands, right?
What's interesting is we didn't actually touch on a single sub point that you had listed under this topic.
I have no idea where I was going when I proposed the topic.
How we doing on time to see? Because I don't know if you want to pitch these all of us if we're going to start new conversations.
We'll have to revisit this.
You just want to pitch them for funsies and then call it a segment?
But, by way of transition, speaking of the international food aisle.
Okay.
Why are mangaka so obsessed with food?
Japan is obsessed with food.
Everybody wants what they don't have.
I see that.
They're always.
I hate how right you are and how sad of an answer that is.
I see this over and over and over again, where you'll be reading a manga that's like a fantasy manga or a sports manga, whatever it is, not a cooking manga, and then all of a sudden there's like 3 or 4 pages where they're gonna eat something, somebody's gonna make it, and the food is just so detailed, and they'll spend like a page and a half describing, and it's always the same description, which is, I can feel the whatever spreading through my mouth. Like, they use the same line every single time, and I don't understand, because it always comes out of nowhere.
Well, I wonder what word they use in Japanese, because I know like oishi means delicious, and it's apparently very common in Japan. Whenever anybody gives you any kind of food, whether you like it or not, you say, "Oh, oishi."
Is that what you say when you get it or when you're eating it?
When you're eating it.
Because I know there is a term that popped up in Golden Kamui from Northern Hokkaido that was like, I was racking my brain for it, but there's like a specific thing. I think they go hina hina when they eat something and they enjoy it. Yeah. It's like, that's like literally one of the characters teaches the other ones, like, that's what you have to say when you eat something and enjoy it. You have to say hina hina. There's
definitely a point to that where, and I actually see that more where they're like, oh, it's so delicious. But like this specific thing where you have a very detailed picture of the food, and then the character describing the texture and taste
You know, I wanted to say maybe there's something about Japanese culture because every time I've been to a Japanese restaurant, gotten a Japanese snack, or watched a Japanese cooking show, the plating is a huge part of it. It has to look good.
The ceremony of it.
But then as I thought about that, I was like, yeah, maybe it's a cultural thing. I thought about, I do a book podcast, and I could tell you every fantasy book, anytime they eat a big meal, especially George R.R. Martin, George R.R. Martin is famous for having 3-page descriptions of a banquet.
So maybe it's not just a manga thing. Maybe
it's just we're reading manga things.
Maybe it's just a lonely guy thing.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah. They're very hungry.
Yeah,
I just
paint with your stomach.
I found it so interesting because I didn't really experience it in other forms, although I don't read books that much, and so like
this doesn't happen here. Also, I don't read those things, so I don't know if it happens there or not. So,
but I mean, I've watched plenty of television in my life, and it's
not as prevalent, I guess.
Right, I never really caught on to that, but for some reason, especially because cooking manga and anime exist, and so it always every time I come across it in like, an isekai medieval fantasy thing, it's always like, this seems so out of place.
I cannot prove this theory anyway. I don't know how I would even begin to, but I would imagine it has something to do with eating nothing but takeout and cup ramen as you work your third 70-hour week.
Like a third of the time, it's ramen. Now, it's freshly made ramen, but it's ramen nonetheless.
It's an idealized version of the cup of ramen you're eating.
I think you're onto something.
This platonic ideal.
But I think maybe there's also something to the idea of kind of the culture of going out after work in Japan. And probably going to one of those street ramen places.
Yeah.
That is probably I'd imagine a big part of it. Why they center a certain amount of the day or something around that meal.
I mean, as we're pulling from dumb pop culture things to try to scry out something about an entire culture of a nation, in all of the Yakuza games, it's like a really big mechanic that there are all these different restaurants, and here are actual images of actual food, of meals and food you get at these restaurants. And it's like the fact that they spend time of every city that you go to in every game so specifically, and have like mechanics tied to eating these meals, where it's like most of the time it's like you do not need to go to any of these to get, like, you can go to one spot and get one thing of food and heal, but the fact that they have all these different meals in all these different places, so like I don't even think they're rendered, because they're just images. They're straight up images of actual food, of actual real person food, and not like somebody didn't draw this. It's just like, no, this is an image. This is a picture taken.
It's got to be some kind of cultural thing.
The developers decided to go out to lunch a bunch and then had to find a way to expense it.
Yeah, I would not put it past the Yakuza team.
And I should say,
hardworking folk.
I quite enjoy food. And I really enjoy Japanese food quite a lot. And so, I can't fault them too much.
We get ramen on the regular, but I get hankerings for it more than most anything else.
But given that it seems to come out of nowhere, in manga specifically, it always struck me as like, this is interesting, potentially odd. So,
yeah, I don't know. I'm wondering now, like, I was trying to think, like, am I being too generalized about Japanese food? But then I was thinking, like, so you get a nice bowl of ramen, you get like a Five Guys burger. If you unwrap that Five Guys burger, it's just gonna fall apart and like fall out of the bun, and it's covered in grease. Mm-hmm. I don't think you'd get that in Japan. I think you'd get like a nice freshly wrapped, well constructed, designed to be eaten burger.
You say that, and I can, from manga and anime, I can confirm that. I can't confirm it in real life. But I've seen plenty of burgers in manga, and they always have that nice little wrap. Like,
immaculate.
Who does that? In and Out, I think.
Yeah.
Speaking of food in manga, there's another manga that has food in it sometimes, and we're going to talk about that now.
Brad, that was terrible. I'm sorry.
Well, do you want to do the jingle?
What? We have a jingle?
Well, you did it last time.
I genuinely don't remember what I did last time. I should have re-listened to this episode.
Well,
the holidays kind of pushed this off a little ways.
It's time for Manga Book Club.
It's time for manga book club. That is not what I did at all last time.
You want to make up a new one every time.
Oh, I'll do it.
Ben, what are we talking about today?
I believe we're talking about Spy Family, which I hope is how you pronounce it.
Spy X Family, Spy Cross Family. Just ignore the X symbol entirely.
It's there to make it look cool.
I was going to look it up before we started.
Just so you know, if you're trying to search for it, it's Spy and then a big X and then Family. We're just going to call it Spy Family because that's dumb.
Okay, Spy Family.
It was like when I learned Hunter x Hunter is not, you don't say it like that. It's just Hunter Hunter.
And that's why I'm saying Spy Family.
Exactly. That's why it's just like, hey, for searching reasons, you're going to have to put that X in there. But for talking reasons, don't put the X in there. It's silly.
In Japanese, the X is always silent.
It's cross. It's you're combining these two things. There's a family, but there's also spy.
Well, I'm glad you said it first because I was totally going to call it Spy X Family.
Well, there you go. I'm glad we saved you that faux pas.
So, as a general overview of Spy Family, the series is a...
Yeah. What are you gonna do the genre?
Oh my god!
It's all of them. It's everything.
There's so
there's a little of everything.
The underlying theme of it is a spy thriller
in a fantasy Cold War, but like you can tell what everything is who's supposed to be who.
However, the underlying theme is a feel-good family drama,
slice of life thing. There's bits of romance, there's moments of action. There's a lot of great comedy in it. The art is impeccable.
I'd describe it as a heartwarming action comedy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're gonna let Ben talk about this now.
Who writes it? Is it Tatsuya Endo?
I don't know the name. Is it somebody who's done something before?
Okay, so this is what I was actually going to talk about. I hope I'm getting the mangaka's name right. I remember reading about some of his other stuff, and apparently what he is most famous for drawing are like hyper violent spy crime thrillers. And his editor suggested to him for Spy Family that he do something a little more lighthearted.
Well, there's plenty of hyperviolence in the last.
But there's also plenty of lightheartedness. So I actually just reread some of the first chapter, which first chapters of manga now are always super long, so they can kind of set things up. So the story is that, like as described, it's like a spy thing. It's kind of a Cold War, East and West Germany a little bit, and you've got our main spy named Twilight, who is this master. He is the master spy. He's like disguised. He'll sneak in places. Like he is the top agent. He has saved the world from entering World War III like so many times. Like he's the guy. And to get at a target, he needs to get at to stop war from breaking out, because that's what a lot of this is about. Is that, hey, these people need to do these things so war does not break out between these two warring nations. The East and the West, the U.S. and the Russians, so to speak, but not actually, because they have like funny fantasy names. So to do this man is only comes out for this private school that he heads it up or something.
No, his son is going there.
I thought he was like a part of the
only reason. Well, it's a very prestigious
school.
And this leader of this political party, who is sort of at the center of this turmoil that is boiling under the surface. His young son goes to this private school because it's such a prestigious school. And the only time that this man comes out into public is for school stuff. And it's very rare.
So to get to him, this spy needs to essentially concoct a family with a wife and a daughter to get, or not a daughter, it's a daughter in the story, but a kid to get in this school to kind of infiltrate that and get at this dude. And I don't remember if he's supposed to take him out or just get in contact with him. And
I believe at this point, it's only to try and get close to him.
Correct. Twilight is a spy, and he's able to do gun stuff, but he's not really he's not an assassin per se.
Right.
So then he needs to
be important later.
Correct. So then he needs to get a kid to get into that, and at an orphanage he finds a little girl named Anya, who turns out is a telepath from some crazy experiment, and she's been hopping between orphanages. She keeps getting returned. She has a bad experience. So she can read his mind, because even though he's not saying he's a spy, he's thinking these things. So she knows he's a spy. But she's not going to tell him that because she's like, I finally have a family. I want to stick around with this. And also, I guess she's told people in the past it hasn't ended well.
She also thinks it'll be cool.
Yeah, her favorite cartoon is a spy cartoon.
Yes, it's called Spy Wars. Like, she's super into spies. So she's like, really, it's like, oh my gosh, my dad's a spy and this is so exciting and cool. And then to complete it, he also needs a wife. And he finds, I think just like out shopping at a store, who...
She's a secretary.
Is a secretary at like, I think one of the government...
Yeah, it's a government department.
Yeah.
I forget exactly which one, but it's not big. It's just a normal... small-sized government department for whatever.
Yeah, and she's like a little hopeless romantic, but she can't quite, find the guy. Also, she's like the best assassin in the world.
Yeah, as an aside.
Just like you do that.
Well, if I remember right, she doesn't necessarily think about dating, but she's getting a lot of stuff for, being 30 and unmarried.
Oh my gosh, what an ancient dinosaur in Japan.
Yeah, and so she has to, she's worried now that, I think they're in the more Soviet country, and she's worried that somebody's going to think she's some kind of, I don't know, nonconformist.
Or just somebody's going to suss her out that she's an assassin. Like, so she's like, wait a minute, this man's wanting a relationship. He seems cool. I need that as sort of a front. And, Twilight, who then is named, takes on the name Lloyd. I don't think we ever actually learn his real name. He's like, oh, here's this woman. She wants, like, it works out. So they form this little family unit where the daughter knows both of their secrets.
And in case there was any kind of question, their family name is Forger.
Yeah, the Forger family.
Yep.
And just the dynamics and the comedies that form, that she can hear both their thoughts, so she knows and is constantly trying to keep the family together, but can't let either of their secrets be learned by the other one or them to learn she's a telepath.
Well, and she's also very much a 5-year-old girl who thinks it's all a game. So she's like the worst person to know all the secrets.
Yeah, like Anya is just... so delightfully stupid sometimes because she's a 5-year-old, and she has flashes of like brilliance, and you want to cheer for her, but like she is so dumb sometimes and like will mess things up, and it's just like a little, like, especially when she gets into the school, it's just such a little goblin child and isn't good at socializing, is really like just not good at study. Like there's very few things she's good at, but she's so just enthusiastic about things.
And in case we didn't have a colorful enough cast of characters already, it's probably quite a few chapters in, but they go and they get a dog, and the dog happens to be able to predict the future.
So Anya reads the dog's brain to see flashes of the future, and all of this feels very much like the thing I always think about is like old Dragon Ball, where it's like these characters are set up this character has this power to set up situations in the future. And it just feels like this is just mechanics to form storylines, but it works well. And the thing that hit me both catching up on it and rereading the first chapter is like, this feels like it should be like when I was reading Death Note, and I'm just constantly feeling this tension of like, somebody needs to know this. The secret needs to get out. I need this feeling of release. And like, I never get that reading Spy Family. We're like 50 some chapters in, and who knows what hasn't changed at all, but like clearly their relationships have progressed, and it's always funny. It always works out right. The dynamics of the story just work so well that it's just like, maybe someday they'll figure out and it'll be really nice, but like, I don't need that to be satisfied when the story, I'm not like waiting for that moment of like, oh, I need to know, like they need to know. It's like, it just works out so well, and all the characters are great. Like you want to root for them. They're all kind of weird, and technically they're all like lying to each other to an extent, but like you see them generally like actually learn to care about each other more, and like their own little like foibles and trying to figure things out. Lloyd is just constantly, he kind of goes down things of like, oh, I'm screwing this up, I'm doing my mission wrong, I'm supposed to be the best spy, and then he'll get like motivated. It's like, no, to be the best spy in this situation, I need to be the best dad, and he like gets like, it's just like super, it's super heartwarming.
It's also, there's a very cute dynamic between Lloyd and Yor where they're kind of falling in love, but they're awkward about it, and she's afraid to let her husband know she likes him.
Yeah,
and
both of them are like that, because it's like, well, I don't want to mess up what's going this because they both know it's a quote unquote fake relationship at the beginning.
So it has this, it has a sitcom thing where it all resets back to the same thing at the end, more or less, because if they ever make any significant progress, it moves towards the comic being over. And I don't think he has any intention to end it anytime
I
soon.
think you can keep it going at some point far in the future that they could learn, and it would switch gears. But like, because it's like, even if I don't need it, like I would love when you get like the Incredibles family moment. Even if just for a couple chapters where we get it has to be reversed, but like where they get to work together. Because like, it is so fun seeing in their little segments of like, yeah, no, these people are like master level things at the things they do. Like yours genuinely a master killer, assassin. I'd say for the right reasons, as much as that can be true, of like genuinely wanting to protect people. And Lloyd has a similar thing, but just on like the spycraft end of thing of like collecting information and infiltrating places, manipulating people. And like, it's like, I want to see those two team up. And like, and imagine that where they have Anya also like trying to get the information. And like, you get that, but it's so, Anya has to kind of be this little passage in between them of like, hey, Dad needs help with this. Mom could help, but I need to get her there in a way that she doesn't see what Dad's doing as his spy stuff, but also that she can do her thing to like, and it just becomes this like it could so easily be annoying or hard to maintain, but it's just so perfectly balanced to set up these situations and the comedy of it. And it's so good. I'm gushing. I'm sorry. Somebody else take it from me.
So many of the situations are based around Anya needs to stay in school first off. That's a struggle for her. And she needs to like get so many merits, like merit badges or something, so that
gold stars.
Yeah, so that she can wind up in the special class
and befriend the son.
Well, that's why she has to get to the special class to befriend the son of this dude, so she can get.
So they wind up having to do all these like very normal activities, like I don't know, attending a PTA meeting, going on a business trip, passing a test, all these things, and it turns into a big espionage operation that is very much overplanned and overconstructed, and a million things go wrong, and Anya's trying to save it, and Yor's trying to save it, and they're all trying to keep their secrets, and hijinks ensues. They come together as a family, and every time they slowly start to express that they don't want this to end. Like, they're all beginning to enjoy their time together as a family, and they're kind of not just doing it for the mission anymore.
And the thing that I think on top of everything else we've gushed about that makes it work, and we get back to that thing where we like listed a billion genres that it does, is that it always keeps things fresh, because it's like, oh, for a couple chapters, we're just following Lloyd where he's on a little mission that involves him playing tennis, and he's just really good at it. So a couple chapters, you just get Lloyd's going on his little tennis adventure.
I forgot about the tennis.
I always think about, we always talk about the tennis adventure. It's so good.
So that's a key point. And the reason that we're recommending this as our second recommendation on this podcast, after Frieren last time, we were saying that one is something that anybody can enjoy, and this is also one where we would recommend this to people who don't particularly like manga.
Yeah, I don't think it has a lot of normal anime trappings.
Right, and it's
in a way that would be off-putting.
It's got so many different angles to it, and the thing that sort of sparked our initial deep conversation on this one was the tennis arc, because what happened is, you know, you're reading this and you get these different kind of peeks into different genres and stuff here and there. The tennis arc one was one that really cemented it, where you were like, oh, this is now a sports manga. Like it does all of the different tropes of a particular genre while also keeping all of the normal things that we like from it: the comedy, the drama, the mystery, the family relationships, all those different things. And it does it in such a seamless way.
It gets to wear a disguise for a couple chapters. You get to do that, and then you get to go back to like Anya trying to befriend people and just being a little shit gremlin.
There was one point where just sort of, I say all of a sudden, but they did sort of lead into it. But all of a sudden, it was a coming of age story for the son of this political guy. Like, he went camping with his teacher and a couple of his classmates, like sort of out of the blue, and it just focused on him for basically the whole chapter. The forgers weren't even around. He was out in the woods experiencing life and growing up. And it just like, it was a coming of age story all of a sudden, and then it went back to being a spy thriller.
But it still felt like you got something of the bigger world. Like it felt both meaningful in a small context and a big context.
Just the way that it slots in these different genres while also not
effortlessly.
Yeah, like very effortlessly. Like you get into it and then you go, oh, I'm now in this genre. You realize it after you've gotten into it. There's no hard stops. There's nothing that's jarring. It just flows together, and now it's a different genre. And then it goes back, and then it picks something else.
Or sometimes it dices them up. They just recently finished one where they're all on a cruise ship, and like you get your going on like, this isn't a shonen action stuff is going on with these fight scenes, but you also have Lloyd trying to go around the ship and like using his spycraft to like collect information and like figure things out, and you've got Anya terrifiedly like running around just trying to like wrangle things. So it's like sometimes you get the family dynamic, and sometimes, like I said, you get just you have like when you finally get to the point where Anya makes it into school and like 20 some chapters in, you just have, here's some Anya chapters, and you finally go like, when she's on her own without any parent supervision, it's like, that's when she busts out the like great reaction faces of just being this little gremlin child, where it's like she's already adorable and wonderful, and like, you know, she's stupid, like she mispronounces words and it's cute, but just like gets proud over the dumbest things, like just thinks she's so clever in moments where she's just not. And it's like, it's so perfect that like it feels like this, like you just get this whole other aspect of this character you've already spent all this time with, and it makes so much sense. And then like that feeds back in where they're together with the family and like all this, like it just, there are so many manga that I love more that we'll talk about. We were talking about Frieren. Like I freaking, you know, like I'm caught up on One Piece, even if I haven't read all of them, I've read most of it, like freaking over 1,000 chapters. I love One Piece. One Piece is really important to me. There's so many things that are great about it. There's just something about Spy Family that is just like, I always go to the food analogy. It's like, this is a food that is somewhat familiar but not familiar, that is just so expertly made. This is not the expertly made burger that I've described a couple episodes ago or in something else, where it's just like, this is simple pieces, like a Jujutsu Kaisen or something, where it's like, this is simple pieces just made at the expert level. This is something different but familiar, just made impeccably. Everything about it is like nigh perfect. It's not like reaching for like the stars. Like that's the one thing that always makes it so hard for me to compare like this and like someday we'll talk about more like a Chainsaw Man, which is like such a weird tortured gem. But like everything about it is just firing on all cylinders from moment one. And like even after that, it finds its footing even more than it was already sure-footed. The art's great. The character's great. The comedy and the writing are great. The situations are incredible. The action is like genuinely awesome. Like it's Spy Family is so good. It's getting an anime. I'm so excited.
And let's not forget, and you touched on this just a little bit, but your favorite part of this whole thing, which is the reaction faces.
They are so good. Just the faces. I wish I could like beam an image to your head via audio, but like the faces, they all make great faces, but the faces Anya makes, especially when she gets to the point, because in the beginning you mostly get her making big shocked faces, but when she starts making those little cocky little gremlin faces, when she's so dumb, but she's like, I figured this out, are so good. Yeah. Like what you were catching up recently and like just clipped out like a bunch of them. Yeah, they are magic.
I'm reading through this and I'm a couple chapters ahead of Andrew, and I didn't want to spoil anything.
No, you were behind. I was already caught up at that point.
Oh, you had already seen all those?
Sorry to burst your bubble. They're still great. I love those faces.
And I know that you love them. So
I do. I was genuinely happy to see them again.
Every time one came up, I was like, oh, clip. Discord.
In the chat it goes.
And I think there was like 5 or 6 that I sent just like in one night.
I mean, I can't add a lot to that. That's pretty much how I feel about it. I think I said about Frieren that I thought the art was generic, but that the writing was so good that I felt like it transcended the anime. With Spy Family, I think Endo is that rare combination of somebody who is just a master of the craft of comicking. He writes well, he draws well, and he's very dynamic. Part of what allows him to genre bend the way he does is he can draw it like a sports manga and write it like a sports manga. He can draw it like a shonen manga. He can draw it like a slice of life.
But it doesn't even look like anime. Like just the way the characters look.
Yeah.
Like it's still manga-y, but I've never seen anything like it, and it just works. It's like last episode we talked about my love of like things that look different. This looks different, but it also just looks so good on top of everything else.
But Anya looks like a chibi anime character.
She's so cute, but it doesn't feel pandering. It just feels like this is Anya. She's this little, again, I call her this little gremlin. She's this little cute little goblin idiot child, and I love her.
It's definitely stylized, but it has its own style to it that like takes from other things, but does its own.
He creates a European vibe in all the countries and architecture, but what I was going to say is I said Frieren transcends manga, and I'd recommend it to anybody who likes comics. I actually have recommended Spy Family to somebody who doesn't like comics as a way to get them into comics. So it's not only because they're not somebody who would go for like typically action stuff, but this was a person who I thought could really get into the family drama.
Yeah.
Like the characters are just so well written. Everyone
So likable.
Well, and everyone is a fully realized, well-rounded character.
Yeah, something Frieren does not do is build on a lot of the other characters. A lot of times
I feel like that's kind of the point of Frieren to an extent, is that it's a character study of like one person.
right, but you'll get enough about another character to know what they're about, but not go too deep into it. Whereas with Spy Family, especially because you're really in the head of a lot of these different characters, even some of just the not necessarily one-off, but sort of side characters, you sort of get an exploration of that.
Yeah.
Well, and everybody has the character dynamics too. Like Anya has the dynamic with the kid she's supposed to be getting close to, and he's starting to develop like a little crush on her, and that's cute. Mm-hmm. And then Lloyd has a dynamic with that guy, or with that kid even a few times. Anya has a friend she has a dynamic with, who also has a dynamic with Lloyd. Yor's brother comes into play all the time.
Oh my gosh, I totally forgot about Yor's brother.
He's one of my
He's
favorite
so
characters,
good.
even though I don't like him.
Exactly. Yeah. He sucks, but he's like the best at the same time.
Yeah, the friendliest secret police officer.
What I think is interesting is for something like Frieren, I could see Frieren being just a book. Personally, I don't know that it would have the same impact because I think the visuals, even though they're sort of generic.
But I guess to your point is like, does Frieren need to be a manga? Could Frieren have been more American looking? Like, could it have had a different art style than just here's anime fantasy?
Yeah, so I think
does that give it any extra power?
Yeah, I think Frieren could be a different style and it wouldn't lose anything. I sort of do feel like being visual does help it, but it could just be a book.
I think Frieren does, like, what the Frieren art does well is it has kind of a dreamy quality at times. Mm-hmm. Where it loses me a little bit is when it goes into that like hard video game style, like when they cast magical spells or something. If Frieren was illustrated, even like a digital art that like mimicked a kind of like dreamy full color background with like, I could see it being done a couple of better ways that would do more for the story. But still, it's still one of my top recommendations. Right. It doesn't lose much.
And so, I mean, what I'm getting at here is that like the story of Frieren is somewhat focused in this exploration of human relationships, and it doesn't really stray from that. There's bits of humor and mystery and stuff here and there. But like, yeah, it's got a main central point, and everything that it does is to serve that point. And so that one's easy to recommend to just anybody because of that. Because like we're recommending this story. We're not recommending a manga. I think with Spy Family, the art side of it is very, very important. The art visually tells the story on top of the word.
And helps the jokes, which are also good.
Definitely helps the jokes. You obviously have those visual gags. But even like the action, the environment, the set pieces, like all of that comes together to tell the different parts of it. And I think that's because it has so many parts.
Spy Family demands to be a comic.
Yes.
And I actually think it's going to work better as a comic than it will as an anime. Though I'm still excited.
I'm really like, that is the big question for me is how that's going to work.
I'm excited.
Mostly because of the timing.
Yep.
Right.
He uses panels so well. which is
it's possible to translate, but it's hard.
Especially
with how expertly made the manga is.
I do agree. I think that's going to be key for the anime to be at the same level of amazing, is that it's going to have to get the timing just right.
Yeah.
And the tone.
Given the trailer that I saw, I think they're going to do. I think that it's going to do it. But we'll have to see.
We'll see.
I think no matter what, I think the anime is going to be good and it's going to bring people in, which is what you want. Like, I wish this guy all the success in the world because I want him to keep making comics.
Yeah. But I think, it's interesting because in other manga, even something like Frieren, like you have these things where it's like, oh, this could be different and it would still be just as good. The art in Frieren could be different. It could still be just as good.
If not better.
The thing with Spy Family is you have all of these different pieces. The art, you have the different genre things that go into it, the different tropes.
Tonally.
You have so many moving parts. But I think if you changed any of them, it wouldn't be the same. I don't think it would be as good if you changed any of those.
Yeah, it's perfect.
And the interesting thing there is that I think it's walking a tightrope.
Yep.
Like it's so good, but it seems like if you shifted some pieces here and there, it would just fall apart. And I think that's what sort of elevates it even more, is that it's done something so difficult.
Well, and he makes it seem so effortless.
Yep.
Yeah. Because I would say the art style isn't very overdone. He is obviously capable of so much more because there are little moments and he chooses when to do, like, I'm going to make this sound like needlessly epic, but he chooses the perfect moments to deploy his full artistic power. Because I could see this guy totally being overindulgent. He could make everything crazy angles. He could make it all very like action packed, but he saves it for when like you're not sure, they're a fake family, but then Anya's in trouble and she calls out to her fake mom. And to let you know that the mom instincts really kicked in, she goes like full beast mode.
Yeah.
And you
see it, you feel it.
He changes
from the art.
He makes it way heavier and like that. He just knows what he wants and he just executes it. I don't know how much time he spends working on it. I don't know if it is.
Spy Family does not come out every week, and sometimes it doesn't even come out every other week.
But yeah, it's one of those ones where I'm happy to wait because I want him to get it right.
And the chapters are not very long. There's like 15 pages.
But the art's so good. You just read them twice. I don't know.
Yeah.
I want to present an idea as a kind of send back to the first half of our episode today. Is Spy Family that the international food is moving to the general aisle? Is this the beautiful mixed tan babies that are just gorgeous from every angle? Like, is this, because it feels like the other side of the coin of your Avatar, admittedly further along, where it's like you can feel some of the anime bits, but you can also feel some of the Western bits. And I feel both of them, but it's just like, it's like 65-40. It's like 65 manga, 45 American, instead of like an Avatar or something where it's like the ratios are the other way around, where it's like 65 America or West, 45 Japan.
So I would say, I hope so. And I hope that what we're doing right now is something that, moves that along. That said, I think something that sort of helps that is the setting.
Yeah.
Because it's set in an Eastern European country after World War II, after the Cold War. It's
World War II. They never say World War II, but all of the visuals, it's like, this is World War II.
Yeah.
There's nothing that it says. I think they say Cold War, but it's like, it's the U.S., it's U.S. versus Russia. Right. They never say that. They have their other little fun words for it, but you can clearly see this is what we're playing off of. Like Ben said, like, this is the architecture, this is the look of people and things.
But because of that setting, there isn't much that's like, oh, this is overtly Japanese.
Yeah.
So I think that really helps it to move that direction. I mean, they still do stuff like bowing and
but it feels
polite speech and stuff like that. But like the setting is decidedly Eastern European. There's an American influence to it, a Western influence, and it does it really well.
But this still feels different than a Western comic. Why is that, though? Is it just because I'm reading it in Shonen Jump digitally?
No, because it's a hybrid. It's not either of them.
But it feels more like...
It's a Western spy thriller viewed through the lens of somebody not raised in the West.
Yes.
Okay, maybe that's it. Is that it's something familiar? Because it's like we talked about this, and we'll probably talk about this in a future episode. But like Jujutsu Kaisen, that we lauded its humor so much because it was clearly so Westernly like inspired. But that still feels very. That one, more than Spy Family, feels still very like it's an anime. And I guess it comes down to tropes. And it's like, there's not as many specifically manga anime tropes in Spy Family, but it still feels, there's just something, again, I also come back to I don't know I can't define manga, but I know it when I see it.
I'd almost have to wonder if Spy Family is more popular in America than it is in Japan. Same with Jujutsu Kaisen.
I have no idea what the numbers are for Spy Family. I know Jujutsu Kaisen is like the #1 selling manga, and it unseated a bunch of things that have been around a billion years. Like, that thing's selling like crazy. It's wild.
Well, that makes me happy, because one of the things I was going to say is, for a long time, I feel like humor especially, if you wanted to target an overseas market, and it doesn't matter if we're talking about Japan and America, or America and China, or India and Russia, they would try to boil it down to the most basic, easiest to translate things, like slapstick.
Yeah. Broad humor.
And Spy Family has nuanced family dynamics, and it's still just a basic human story that anyone can get, but maybe it's easier for us because it's based on Western media.
And there's like fun little like word puns where like with visuals attached, where like Anya says something wrong and you see the little thought bubble of what she thinks it is, and then Lloyd's like, no, it's this. Yeah. Well, and this is what I'm talking about.
That's an extra burden on the translator, because then the translator probably has to come up with an entirely different joke
that uses the same image. Like, I'm a sucker for those. As somebody who grew up watching Bobo 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 Bo, where there's like almost no jokes in the original Japanese made it over to the English because they were just untranslatable. So they just said, F it, we're just going to do a bunch of like wordplay and puns and, kind of Dadaist non sequiturs, and it worked.
What a really good translator. I mean, yeah, that's what
they did a really good job. They played with what was going on screen and kind of made humor from whatever they had.
I would say, I think because we're reading the official translation, that also helps. I'm sure that they're working very closely to get those translations.
The person writing this very clearly already has a lot of familiarity with Western things. They probably can already start writing those jokes to an extent.
Maybe they even speak English themselves.
Very possible. I don't know. Maybe that's something we research.
I would hope so. I know translators are often underpaid.
Yep.
and they don't always put the amount of money into a translation you would like them to. Given its popularity, I'm sure it's gotten more attention and they can get the resources they need, but
it was also excellent from the jump. So I don't know that its current popularity.
It is printed in Jump. Well,
he is a known artist with a lot of decent series under his belt.
Right.
So that probably helps him.
Go check it out. Like, even if you don't read it, like, just go look at the art. Just like go see it. Understand, I can't beam an image into your head via audio yet. So please go look at it.
Yeah. Highly recommended.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, to anyone. Even if you don't like comics. I don't know why you'd be listening to this if you don't like comics at all.
Yeah,
but
it's sort of...
Maybe you're like a friend of ours who just kind of listened out of like a feeling of wanting to help. Right. So
recommend it to your mom.
It is definitely...
Don't recommend it to my dad. He doesn't want to read it. Probably.
Our last recommendation in this one, we're recommending to people who don't watch anime and don't read manga, and yet... why would you be listening to this podcast otherwise? But there it is.
No, it's about sending it to your friends who aren't. The person who's listening to this is in on it, and now they know a new thing to suggest to their friends who aren't as in on it yet.
And you know what? Go read Spy Family. If you're not into manga,
it'll make your day.
You like it? Well, guess what? There's an anime coming out. You can watch that when it comes out.
You can be ahead of the curve. You can be one of the cool kids.
And then you'll get into manga and anime, and then you can listen to more episodes of That Time I Got Reincarnated in the Same World as an Anime Podcaster. So, thanks for listening.
Yeah, thank you, listener.
I had fun with this. I hope you guys had a good time. Always enjoy our conversations.
Hopefully our enthusiasm translates to your enthusiasm, listening listener.
Well, we can definitely hear your enthusiasm, Andrew.
Can't contain it.
I am also enthusiastic.
Yes.
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 So, if you're listening to this on a podcast platform like, Apple Podcasts or Spotify or whatever, I would highly encourage you to check us out on YouTube. We put the podcast up there simultaneously, but also we do unboxing, which is we have a Japanese monthly snack box that comes called Boxu, and we do a video of us unboxing it. And it's fun. And a new one will be coming out in just a few short weeks. So get subscribed on our YouTube channel to be notified when that comes up.
And make sure on those podcast platforms you're listening there to rate and review us.
Yes.
Years of listening to podcasts have conditioned me to go, please go there and rate 5 stars and write a review. It supposedly does very good for the algorithm to send us through the probably piles and piles and piles of anime podcasts. But you chose this one because you've got good taste. So please let other people know about it so they can start listening to some good stuff.
I want you to go listen to the podcast on iTunes, give it 5 stars. Then you're going to go listen to the podcast on Podchasers. You're going to give it 5 stars. Then you're going to listen to it on Spotify, 5 stars again. Then you're going to listen to it on Good Pods. Better believe 5 stars.
And leave a review.
And I want a review.
Go questing through the world and physically mail me the 5 stars that you find.
We legitimately want to hear from our audience. We were very happy with the response on the first one, but not really anybody reached out. So please reach out. You can
shoot us a dumb message. Suggest a thing for us to talk about. We'll do it. I'll read it.
You can find me on Twitter at Isekai Sensei, or you can email me Isekai Sensei-Sama at gmail.com. And obviously you can find all those links in the description and on the site and all that fun stuff. As I said, we have the YouTube channel. You can go on there and leave comments and like and subscribe and all that fun stuff. And as Ben said, check us out on Good Pods. I recently got on there and it looks like it's going to be a good platform. So you can go on there, you can rate the individual episodes, leave comments, follow, and there's groups and all that fun stuff. So check us out there. Ben, do you want to plug your individual stuff?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I've got another podcast I do. If you like all the philosophy bro things I say on this, you'd probably love my other podcast, Words About Books, wherever you get your podcast. You can also check us out streaming on twitch.tv/wordsaboutbooks. We're doing that Mondays and sometimes Saturdays. Saturdays up in the air. Getting there, though.
And we're still waiting on that Words About Books bump. So.
Oh, yes.
We didn't get our plug yet. Waiting on that. I keep listening to all your episodes and I really heard it. Andrew, you got something you want to plug?
You can find me, if you like to hear my dulcet tones more, on my podcast, Ramble Rousers, where it's a lot less structured. I usually just talk, we'll record an episode if I have a burning question in my head, or just whatever weird little project I do, interview my friends. I don't know. That one's a very random updater. You can also find my YouTube channel, Kermit the Grog, on the YouTubes, where I post similarly different things that I work on. Right now, the main thing is As They Happen. I have a competition amongst my friends called Shag Champ, where we take place in video game tournaments, and the winner trades back and forth a comical Harrius Chest Ken doll trophy that I bought that says third place runner-up Harrius Chest Cancun 1969. So you can see us duke it out to see who is the Shag Champ.
Who won that last?
My friend Grace had it after a game of Gang Beasts. We had a very close gang of Gang Beasts, so she was the original holder. You can go watch that or some of the older episodes and figure out who's got it now, and subscribe there to see what's coming next. So
you just have way too much fun all the time, don't you?
I've got a lot of different projects going on.
I exude content.
Yeah. So, as I said, thanks for listening. We had a lot of fun. We really appreciate everybody who even if you just listen for a couple minutes, although if you're hearing this, you listen for a lot more than a couple minutes.
Maybe they just skipped to the end. Maybe that's just kind of the rebel they are. Yeah. Power to you, wild stallion.
But, we're going to keep doing this. So
whether you like it or not,
I guess we're really only going to be doing 12 episodes a year, but we got lots and lots of stuff to talk about yet. So
no worries on that front.
We're going to get through it. So, from me, Isekai Sensei-Sama, and from Kermit D. Grog, and from Bento Baggins. So until next time, remember, if you get hit by a truck and end up in another world, make sure you grind before you do anything else.
Amen.
See ya.
See ya.